So for booking your transportation today, all you're going to need is your itinerary, writing utensil, and Rome to Rio website. Okay, so we're going to start at rometorio.com. Notice that the 2 is the number 2. You just type in your starting and ending point for each leg of the trip. So since you haven't decided yet where in Tuscany you want to go, we can just plug in kind of any town. Let's do Montepulciano because they have like the best wine, and so we'll just see what that looks like. And then as you pull it up, I can already see that the train is going to take a lot longer than driving, and that makes sense because a lot of times when you're going to a smaller town, when you're not going to like a bigger city, that's generally the case because you have to take a regional train that makes a lot of stops and goes slower. So it's about a midway point between Rome and Florence, and that would actually really make sense to have a car in Tuscany anyways, because then you have you can take your time stopping along the way, and then you have those 2 days to explore, and you can drive around the different areas. And then when you go up to Florence afterwards, it would make sense to keep your car and drop it off there. And we'll just see what that looks like. But I think that renting a car right before you leave Rome and driving to wherever you're going to stay in Tuscany, having that car for those couple of days, and then driving up to Florence and dropping off your car will make a lot of sense. But let's just double check that with Montepulciano to Florence. And once again, it does look like the drive is going to be much shorter than the train. Plus, then if you're driving, you can decide on your route and make whatever stops you want to make, and it would be a lot more fun. So we'll book a car for that part of the trip. So then we just need to figure out how to get from Florence to Venice. And I can almost guarantee that the best option is going to be train, because you don't want to have a car in a city like Florence, and you don't want to have a car in a city like Venice if you can avoid it. So that's why, or even in Rome, so that's why you would want to book your car right before you leave Rome, like on your way out of town, and drive to Tuscany, drive to Florence, drop it off on the edge of town if possible, and then not have a car there. And then it looks like taking a train from Florence to Venice is going to be a really easy option. It's just 2 hours, which is pretty good because that goes fairly far. When you click on it, you can get more details. And what's kind of nice is that you can see that there are slower trains and faster trains. So these ones that are slower are the more regional trains that make a lot of stops and go really slow. So that's one thing you want to be careful about. Make sure that it's the fastest train. So when we go to book trains, we want to try to get the 2-hour trains, not the 4-hour trains. Can make a big difference. So on this website, you can see what, some of those stops are. And this is just to give an idea of what it looks like. It also gives you the names of some of the trains. When I book, and kind of what the flights or what the cost looks like. When I book trains in Europe, there is one site that I go to first to book pretty much anywhere, and that is DB Bahn. So I'm going to type in dbbahn.com, and this is a German website that has pretty much all of the trains. So the first thing you need to do when you get there is change it to English if you don't speak Deutsch. That can make it quite confusing. Okay, and then you're just going to type in Florence and Venice. Okay, and then just pick a day that's similar to what your trip would be. And I like to do at least a couple weeks out just to get a good idea, but holidays are going to be weird. So how about let's do February 9th just to see what it looks like. And since Italy, let's see what first class looks like. It doesn't matter. We're just seeing what the trains are right now. Oh, and notice that we set it up for around that time of 1:15. You can change that to earlier by clicking here, or later if you want to leave earlier or later in the day. It doesn't really matter, just whatever works for you. And now you can see that we have all of these options, all of these trains. Notice they leave very frequently. So that makes this trip from Florence to Venice really quite easy. Another thing that you want to notice is that you have different stations. So you have the SMN station in Florence and whatever this Rifredi station is. In Venice, you have Santa Lucia and you have Mestre. You can look at the details to figure out what exactly that means. If you click on Show Details, we'll look at this one and then we'll look at that one. First of all, when you look at the details, it's great because it shows you the name of the train and more information about the train. You can even look at all the intermediate stops, which I like to do. I find that really helpful. But you can also, if you don't know the station you want to be at, you can just Google that, but you can also look at the map view. And when you're in the map view, let's see. This is going to be really hard. When you're in the map view, you can look at where the station is. So let's see, just out a little bit. Notice that this station is kind of in the center of Florence, just over on this left side here. I'm guessing that the other station is over here. So either way probably wouldn't make much of a difference. Just depend on where your hotel is probably. And the destination station, oh, that's kind of fun to say, destination station. The destination station in Venice is right down by the water. So that's actually pretty convenient. If you're not going to have a car in Venice, it's actually really convenient to be able to be as walkable as possible. So let's just look at the other one to compare, because these are a different leaving station and arriving station. And let's look at the Venice station first. Let's see where this is. And see, I'm not even seeing. So see how Venice is over here and this is a station here. So that only gets you part of the way there, which means that you're gonna have to then take the bus over to Venice, which adds, because I've done that because I think I had to return a car over here and took a bus over here, and it adds an extra like half an hour or so to your trip. So much more convenient to just go straight to that station. So when we are booking, we want to make sure that we don't get the Mestre station. We want to get the, where is it? Santa Lucia station, because that puts you more right in the heart of Venice. Let's just double check in Florence. Okay, so it looks like the one in Florence is a little bit further out than the original one as well. So you don't want to leave from this station unless you're staying outside on that edge of town, which you're most likely not going to do. So you don't want to leave from this station. You don't want to arrive in this station. So when we go to book, you'll want to remember that. It's helpful to hide these intermediate stops. Just take like a little screenshot. Now in a lot of places in Europe, you can just book those train tickets right on this website here. But notice that it says tariff abroad here. That means that you can't actually book it on this website. And pretty much all Italian trains. I don't think you can. You need to go to a different website, which we're going to go to next, called Trenitalia. But there's just something else I want to show you. If right here you see a little R that's circled, that means that there's a reservation that's required. So then you would definitely want to book the train in advance, but this doesn't show that, so you might be okay. So let's go to Trenitalia.com. And once again, this is going to pop up in Italian, most likely, and we will need to change the language to English. Unless you speak Italian, of course, then you can just book it in Italian. Okay, so now once again, we're just kind of browsing, looking around. So we're going to go from Florence. And notice nothing's popping up, so we need to be able to do the Italian Firenze. And SMN was the train station we were looking at. There's a different one popping up there, so that might be a good one too. And once again, not just Venice, but Venezia. And see how you have both options? We want to choose the one that was the one that was more in the heart of town. It makes it a lot easier. Let's just look at the same date we were looking at. I'm assuming, yeah, that's okay. And 1300, sure. Now, if you knew the exact date and time that you wanted to go, you could book on this website if it's not too far in advance. A lot of times you have to, it can only be 3 months or less, but I don't recommend booking a train more than 3 months in advance, unless you're taking a very popular train in a very high season. So here, notice the website looks a little bit different. It doesn't give you quite as much information as DB Bond sometimes, but notice that you can actually book them and get the real prices. So that's kind of nice. So we want to make sure we have the right stations here. Make sure that the duration is correct. So this one's a little bit longer and has changes. You do not want to have to change your train. You want to stay on one train the whole time on something this short. If you have to change trains like this, you if there's any sort of, if this train is delayed and arrives late, especially in Italy, bound to happen, you might miss this one and then you're all thrown off. So don't do that unless you're taking a really long trip and you have to. On these shorter ones, it's so much easier to just book the direct ones. So let's say that we choose this one. Come on. Okay, so you have all of these prices that show up. Here we go. All of these prices that are showing up, and you can see that you have like these different special things. So this one is for people that are younger. Up to 25 years old. And this one is for seniors. So I'm assuming 60. This is probably if you have some sort of special bookings. So you can play around with those and see, read the information of what's available on whichever website you're on. But then you also have these different classes, and so those will go up as well. On a shorter distance, standard is usually just fine, but especially in Italy, I kind of like getting paying for the higher classes, like a business class is nice, or business silent area. Because you're sure to have air conditioning and it's generally quite a bit nicer. So if you were going to go ahead and book this on the website, you could. You can also show up at in Florence and book it when you're there. And that's just fine too. You can usually get your tickets just at the train station, although you might end up paying more that way. So that's kind of a downside of that. Another option is to go to a travel agency when you're in that in Florence, and maybe on a different day and book it that way. Or you can even book it online, just now or when you're there, when you're on the road, and that's fine too. Okay, so after looking at Rome to Rio, we made a few decisions. We're going to rent a car when we leave Rome to drive around and through Tuscany and stay there and have a car that whole time. Then we're going to drive on our way to Florence and return the car on the edge of Florence there when we first arrive. Then we don't have to deal with the car the whole time that we're there. And then we also decided that we're going to take a train between Florence to Venice, that the train is going to take about 2 hours of our time and cost about $45. When we're ready to book that, we can definitely do it on Trenitalia, the website, or we could probably just book when we're in Florence because it's a shorter train. So that's it. The next steps would just be to start looking at car rentals on the correct day of picking up in Rome and the correct day of returning in Florence. Okay, so now that you know how you're getting from place to place, you have your trip ready to go. So now it's just about having fun with some of the details, like what to pack or things to do in each city. So that's where it gets really fun. So you've already planned an entire trip in 4 days and you're ready to go tomorrow if you need to. Awesome. Nice work.